of the Dartmouth Waterways Commission. As the town office buildings remain closed to the public due to the governor's ban on public gatherings, this public meeting will instead be held remotely through the Zoom application and will be accessible for live interaction by the public. This meeting is also being recorded for future viewing by DCTV. I want to begin by thanking DCTV, Daniel and Peter Chase and Cindy Marlin for their help in just putting this all together. Let's begin with the attendance. Lauren Hathaway.
Lauren Hathaway here.
Andy Hurley. Jerry Hickey is here. Jeff Marshall is possibly going to join us later. Kevin Murphy.
I'm here.
Roger Race.
I'm here.
Patty Sweraduck.
Here.
Steve Mello.
Here.
Good. All right, you've all had a chance to look at the minutes of our last meeting. Anybody have any comments or suggestions?
Move to accept the minutes as written.
I'll second that.
All right, is there any discussion on this? Having none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, for what we'll do the rest of this meeting, rather than take a roll call on every vote, if there's, we'll just take a roll call on if anyone has an abstention or anyone has an objection. Is that okay with everybody?
Sir.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's begin with the Rogers Street facility. What's going on down there? Is that operational yet? Steve, you have any information?
I took a drive down there today and there's no activity. The gate was left open, so I closed it, though it's not locked, it's just pinned. There are stakes, about 6 or 8 of them, sticking out of the beach, about 3.5 feet high, going down from the street into the water, but there are no trucks, no equipment, and no activity. What I heard yesterday was that they hit ledge trying to drive in the coffer dam, and they're going to develop a plan B and try to follow that. So I've heard nothing from the town, nothing from anybody other than Andy, who saw what went on yesterday, and they've demobilized. So I don't know what's going to happen or when.
Did they leave the crane there, Steve? I noticed the crane was there this morning.
It was gone by this afternoon, and only the
Okay.
stakes, the wooden stakes,
I
remained
saw those, yeah.
in the sand. That was it.
Okay.
For those watching at home, this Rogers Street project we're talking about is Rogers Street runs from Dartmouth Street to the water in Clark's Cove, adjacent to the Council on Aging and Faye's restaurant. So that's where Rogers Street is. All right, now moving on to the current Grant Maritime Center update. Steve?
Following our last meeting, I spoke with Deborah Winder by email, actually, and we discussed getting twice as many beach mats so that we could cover the area from the road, the dinghy rack area, down to the water at low tide. And I believe 12 mats have been ordered, where we may have had 6 ordered before. And they were supposed to pick up the old wrong colored mat today. Nobody showed up. And I don't know if they're going to deliver the new ones at the same time or not. But Deborah Winder is working on that order and with that company. So I find the less chefs, better the soup. And last fall, they tried to tell Deborah that I approved the wrong colored mats, the blue mats. And I gave all the emails that I had to her. And turned out that they had never spoken to me. They had never emailed me. They just decided to send us what they had. And they're going to take those back. So.
Okay, so that's still on hold until we see what's going on with it, right?
The pump upgrade, I'm still waiting to hear. Clean Vessel Act says it won't be until after July 1st, and they're not sure that the federal money is going to be the same or sufficient to cover a new pump. So if we're waiting for that grant funding source, we may be waiting in vain, or we may be waiting until after the Seaport Council money is gone. So I've requested that they allow me to use the Seaport Council remaining funds to upgrade the pump and bird in the hand kind of approach to it. I haven't
And
heard
that all
anything
ties
yet.
into the project. So this isn't anything that's out of the ordinary with regard to the requirements for the grant money that we received, correct?
No, it is all related to the Seaport Council project. The pump that we had, we were trying to use and repurpose for the new dock. And it wasn't until after the new dock was installed that we were advised that the run, the angles, and the rise were going to be too much for that older, smaller pump, and that we should upgrade. So that's where we are, trying to upgrade to a more powerful pump that'll work with a longer, steeper dock.
Okay, any questions?
It seemed to me we talked about this in the last meeting. Is there some reason that you haven't been able to get approval or denial from Deb Wender on this?
No, I think that it's a wait and see game. They're waiting to see what the Clean Vessel Act money, whether it will come in or not. And, we're going to have to proceed with a pump that we've got and limited our use to high tide until it gets resolved. But the request was clear and it was made that we want to upgrade the pump as a priority. And that's where we are.
So
For those,
you've essentially,
Right.
excuse me,
okay,
we've essentially been denied the Seaport Council money. Is that true,
I'm not sure I heard that, King garbled.
Steve? Essentially, you've been denied using the grant money from the Seaport Economic Council from the Maritime Center.
I wouldn't say that I've been denied yet. I think that what we've been told to wait and see what happens with the Clean Vessel Act. And I think what's going to happen, I fear, is that we'll get denied clean vessel funds and we won't be able to then tap into the remaining Seaport Council funds.
That Seaport Economic Council money goes away on June 30th. So
That's
we have to
great.
use it. We have to use it or lose it. I think someone
and-
should be on top of that.
and they know that. They know that. I've talked with Chairman Mickelson about that. And we should follow up on this tomorrow.
There's no higher or
Yeah.
better use than the pump. And we
Right.
know how much the pump will cost. I've supplied the actual Edson estimate for it. If CVA comes through with funds later on, then we'll use that for the installation part, or I don't know. But at this point, I say we take the bird in hand and apply it and get the ball rolling.
The last conversation I had with someone about this is that this is all an allowable funding. So this is allowable. It was similar to a change order. And Kevin, you're familiar with that. So then with that, we asked to have some benches in the Maritime Center showers. We asked to have the mats that Steve talked about. We also asked to use any remaining funds of the 14.5 that was left to go toward this pump.
Steve, what number did you get for the pump, please?
15,600.
Is that including installation?
No, that's for the purchase of the pump from Edson.
Okay.
What's
And then
the
there is
investment
enough money
rate?
left I'm sorry, Patty, go ahead.
How much do you think it's going to cost to install it?
That's difficult only because we already have most of the system in place. They're only going to be replacing the pump at the head. So $5,000 would be the upper end of the installation.
And how much did we, didn't at the last meeting we vote to send a letter to Deb Wender and Sean McGinnis and the select board in support of this?
Yeah, I thought we did. I thought we notified them after our meeting what we did. It was in our minutes.
But
We'll
did
follow
we,
up on that.
but did we write a letter to them? Because I thought that was the motion, if I remember.
It was a motion, yes.
It was a motion to write a letter to go to those specific people so that we were on record. Did we do that, or?
The minutes reflect that Kevin Murphy motion, Patty Swear seconded, the Waterways vote to endorse and advise acceptance of the harbor master's recommendations relative to the remaining funds. It doesn't say anything beyond that, so there wasn't a.
All right, we'll follow up to that tomorrow.
I mean, did,
It's all over.
so is
Bye, Patty.
it just went to the minutes? Because I thought the intent there was to make sure that all of those above named people, if they didn't read our minutes, got some notification that we support our harbor master's recommendation for this.
That has all been sent to those three parties.
But
The Chairman Mickelson, Ms. Wender, and Mr. McGinnis.
what, the minutes were sent?
No, that information was sent. We'll just follow up on it tomorrow. Unless you want to write another letter.
No, we didn't write a letter. Right?
I,
We didn't write a letter.
no, we didn't.
We sent an email. Did
We
we
sent
send
the
it?
minutes. I think we sent the minutes.
See,
What do you
I
say?
think that, see, I would just say that the intent was to make sure that they saw it. So I would say that we need to send something, perhaps an email to them, a specific email to them saying that we're in support of using the funds. And now with this additional information that Steve has given us about, you know, that we may not get money from the other entity that I think, and that we've got, I think we should send an email to those parties, a specific email, and not just have it be in the minutes.
I'll be happy to do that tomorrow. They've already received that several times. So, and there's no question that this is what our intent is with the rest of the money. At one point, it was a non-starter, but now there was a conversation about this happening. So I'll follow up with an email tomorrow. To all three parties.
I would just like going forward to, you know, put things more in writing instead of just conversations. I think conversations are wonderful, but I think we need to have belt and suspenders here and have something in writing on an email that identifies this particular issue specifically and goes to everybody so that it's somewhere, not just in the minutes.
I agree with that.
I'll be happy to send an email tomorrow. What do you want to do? Is that what everybody wants?
Sure. Good.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it should
Yes.
be addressed specifically, so we
I'll
can.
be happy to do that tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And can you CC
They've
us?
already seen that. They've already seen this 3 times, so I'll be happy to send another letter. Make it
Yeah, it just seems to be
text,
kind of a,
emails and everything else. They've already
right,
seen.
but it just seems within the last 2 weeks, we certainly could have gotten an answer to a simple question like that. This whole issue seems pretty cut and dry to me. We got X amount of thousands of dollars left. There's really only one important thing we want to spend it on, and the deadline is June 30th. I don't know, you know, it seems to me that should take place in a matter of a couple of days, and we're 14 days later, and we still don't have an answer from them.
Well, and I might add, Steve has new information now because of the grant possibly not being funded. So that raises a big red flag.
Yeah.
And being able to pump out only at dead high tide for an hour plus or minus high tide is unacceptable. That's not the intent of the Clean Vessel Act. So I think you have information now that makes this very germane.
Yes.
For those, Steve, for those watching at home, would you just explain what we're talking about with this pump and the Clean Vessel Act? Just a quick explanation.
The Clean Vessel Act is federal funding that's funneled through the state to local municipalities and places that do pump outs. They take waste off of boats and they put it through the treatment system of the city or town. The funding for this program comes through fishing. Wallet Bro is the bill in Congress. It comes through taxes on fishing equipment, taxes on small engine or outboard fuel, and it's directed back into the marine industry rather than going into the general funds. So this money is specific for pump outs, taking waste and treating it. We have 2 systems that we use. 2 boats that have holding tanks that do pump outs from the boat to the shore. At the shore, we have a peristaltic pump at the end of the Maritime Center dock that takes the waste out of our boats, or any boat for that matter, and puts it into the town sewage system. Each year, we keep track of the pump outs that we do, the amount of waste that's estimated to be removed, and the cost for fuel and oil and labor. And we're reimbursed up to 3/4 of what we spend on pump out to a certain amount each year set by the state based on what's available from the federal government. Occasionally, we have capital needs like replacing the pump, replacing an outboard. 5 years ago, it was buying an entire boat. And those special projects are lined up based on priority, need, and available funding. The state will dole out that supplemental. So this year I've requested as supplemental funds the replacement of the pump because I knew last summer that it wasn't keeping up at the end of the summer, and then a replacement 4-stroke outboard engine because 2-stroke engines are not good for idling, which is what the pump out boat does. So those two were sent as supplemental requests, and the communication I received recently was that funding is touch and go because of the coronavirus, because boating is down in some states, it's prohibited. So funding would be an issue, and they would not know until after July 1st whether the feds were going to grant us, how much they would grant us. That's where we are now. We've got seaport money that is not being used, that if it goes back, creates a headache in accounting. And if it goes back and CVA says no, then we don't have funds for an upgraded pump, never mind the outboard. But at this point, we're talking about the pump that's needed to take the waste from individual boats or from our boat and send it to the treatment facility so it's not ending up in the water that people are swimming and playing in. That's basically it in a nutshell.
Roger. Thank you. Roger.
Muted. This is a critical point. We're having a pandemic around the world, and we want to clean up the harbor and not allow it to get dirty. I think this is critical right now, and I would advocate get that pump as quickly as you can and damn the torpedoes. We'll pay for it later, but this is critical to keep our harbor clean.
All right, I'll send an email tomorrow. The last I heard was that Deb Wender had talked to Ellen Sabula at the Seaport Council, and they were working on exactly what Steve was talking about. I'll follow up tomorrow, and I'll get a notice out.
I think it's
Anything else,
also,
Patty?
I think it's also important to note that virus can be excreted in waste.
Right, exactly.
And I think that I think that that is that needs to be put in an email. I hate to be
Okay.
indelicate, and that was about as delicately as I could put it, but virus can be excreted in waste. And if we don't have something that works, we're going to have a problem in the harbor.
Okay, anything else? Any other comments? Good? Okay. Moving right along, Dias Landing, Marina feasibility study.
The Urban Harbors Institute was requested a month ago to supply a scope of work and a proposal. I received an email minutes before we started this meeting, and I mean literally minutes before the meeting, that they had put together part of the scope of work, and they are waiting for me to find out if they're going to be allowed to hire subcontractors. And information is sketchy on what percentage of the work would need to be farmed out to a subcontractor from Urban Harbors. And if that were allowed, would that violate Chapter 30B? And this goes way above my pay grade, never mind my, scope of understanding. But I think they're going to be, I think my final answer is going to be that they need to contact our procurement agent, which is Greg Barnes, and get the answer from him, because it's too difficult for me to give any answer with any reliability at this point. So
Yeah.
that's what we're
I
waiting
think
for.
as I recall, the $80,000 grant number we got, that we were kind of advised that number was going to work. I would hope that Urban Harbors pretty much has that in mind when they're giving the scope of work. And additionally, I think a small kind of rendering of the proposed marina be included in that, so that moving forward, if we are allowed to move forward, at least we'd have something visual to present as a result of the feasibility study. So I think it's important that some type of rendering be accomplished as part of the study.
We haven't seen the scope of work, but we could, if it's not included, send it back and request that. Now, whether something like a rendering is something they would have to hire an artist to do, and that's part of the subcontracting, I'm not sure. I don't know if it's that, or if it's financial analysis that they're looking to get subcontracted out, but I think they need to get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, and find out from the procurement officer how much they'd be allowed to subcontract without violating 30B.
They've had this at least a couple of weeks, correct?
Since before our last meeting, yes, probably a
yeah.
month.
Yeah.
Maybe Roger could help us out here. I think he has a little bit of an understanding with Urban Harvest, don't you, Roger?
Yes, I'll be happy to make a call to my buddies and find out what the heck's going on. But I would agree, a letter directed from Steve back to them. I don't know the procurement rules either. There may be a limit, like 49% has got to be, or under has got to be subcontractors. They should get that answer from Greg, but I'll get the answer of what we want to do, and I'll follow up with my buddies there.
And Roger, I'll send you the emails from Urban Harvest to me with a question that they posed so you can see how it was framed.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on that issue? All right, our last meeting, we talked about the dredge grant postponement. That notice was sent to everybody, correct?
I sent that by email because I had that task to send it to Sean McGinnis and Deborah Wenda. Deborah Wenda responded immediately that she would notify Ellen, and Ellen has acknowledged that she heard we were going to delay. So that did get sent up and that did get worked around.
All right, so, and we're gonna look at this again at the end of the summer, correct?
That's what we told everybody.
That was the motion. All right.
Yes.
All right, anything else on that? Any other grant information we want to talk about?
I have nothing.
Okay. All right. The Dias Landing Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs.
We had an order about a month back regarding the use of the landing. That really hasn't changed very much with the latest round that came out yesterday of what I call guidance. The landing is still supposed to be used by Massachusetts license plate vehicles only. I'm getting all sorts of questions, and to me, it's as basic as that. If the four-wheel vehicle you roll into the lot with doesn't have a license plate that has the word Massachusetts on it, you're not supposed to use it. Doesn't matter that you may own 12 houses in Mass or 20 houses in Massachusetts. They look at the vehicle that's in the parking lot, and if it doesn't say Massachusetts, it doesn't belong there. So I'm having a lot of experience sending out that simple explanation to people who may have a summer home, may live in New Hampshire, may register their car in another state for tax reasons. But so that really hasn't changed. They're still allowing calling for social distancing, minimal contact with common touch points such as handrails and guardrails. The other part that I found interesting, the ramp is to be used for the launching of boats and boat-related activity only, no organized events. We know what they do every Wednesday night with the park property. I don't know how they're planning to, but they claim they're still going to have a concert series. That's on them. I don't know what else to say about that. The state controls the ramp. The state says no events. So maybe someone from the state will explain it to them. But
Yeah, that's not our problem.
nope, we're not hosting that party. So
So another part of that, people now are driving down to the Dias Landing, sitting in their cars and just trying to get away from the house and just sitting watching the water. There's no problem with any of that as long as they stay in their cars. And if they get out, they have to have a mask, but they shouldn't be out anyway. Correct?
That's always been our approach, that it's a public access facility for passive and active recreation. If you're sitting in your car, eating your lunch, watching the water, contemplating the universe, trying to figure out what the heck the harbor master is doing out there in his boat, that's okay. We don't stop people from doing that. it has gotten to the point this year where I've seen more cars there than any other point. High school kids who haven't been able to congregate, you name it. But again, it's not interfering with boating, and people seem to be doing what's requested on the social distancing, so we're not cracking down. But if it does become a problem and it interferes with the use by boaters, then we'll have to go to another level, but I'm hoping that's not going to be the case.
And we're asking people that they get out of their cars to launch their boat to wear masks. Is that correct?
That's correct. They're supposed to stay socially distant, stay with only their family unit, wear a mask, and minimize contact with common handrails, ladders, that kind of thing.
Steve, is there any signage anywhere that reminds people of the rules?
There is. Actually, there's looks like a political sign as you drive in, and someone, I believe the town must have posted it there, but it gives the reminders that are what to go everywhere, basically. There's another sign that'll be going at the Maritime Center because that's due to open this weekend. So there'll be one of those universal language signs there, and one at the head of the dock at the yacht club that I was supplied from the health agent in town. So the signage is up. Whether people can read it or follow it or choose to is on them. But we are putting out the notice that is being asked to be put out.
Jeff?
Hi, Steve, just jumping back to the Maritime Center quickly. If someone could notify the DPW that those trash barrels are pretty full over there, and maybe that they get worked into a pickup schedule. And then one other question back to the Dias Landing. Have the security cameras, are they working? Are you able to view what they can view? And do we have an update of that process?
Right now, that's still in the hands of the police department that had them installed, and maybe the town manager, but it hasn't been shared with me, is all I'm going to say at this point. There is a recording machine. I'm not even sure how to, but there's a recording of what goes on based on motion. And the last request that I had to go down there was so they could install microwave antennas. So,
They like our poll, huh? Yeah.
well,
So-
no, they put it so darn low on the pole that it's, again, I think that company has just one ladder and it's a short one. But the pole would have been perfect for a tall, a microwave at the top, but it's not. You can see where it is, and
Maybe he's afraid of heights.
That
Yeah,
should
could
really
be.
be fixed. I mean, that job has been in the works long enough that that shouldn't have been done the way that's done.
3 years.
And,
3 years.
I think that we should also, following up on what Patty suggested before, send some kind of a letter to whomever that has control of that security system, giving us an update where it stands now, what our expectations are to be, if Steve's able to view it, if the public's able to view it at all. And we know nothing about that. And it's in our kind of our wheelhouse. And I think a letter should be sent to firm up just what's going to be done with that and when it will come online or what the final status is going to be.
my involvement to date has consisted entirely of being asked to open the door twice at the shed. That's it.
All right. Well,
I don't
let's
think
see.
that's a
Roger.
satisfactory answer.
Roger.
Steve, is there a recording device in the little shed? Is that what's happening?
That's the plan. Yes, I can't say for sure if it's there yet or not, but there is equipment in the shed.
Okay.
It doesn't look like the Betamax VCR that I still use, but there is stuff there.
Yeah, we'll
see
try
if we
to
can-
bring you into this century, Steve, but
Kicking and screaming.
Well,
maybe
Let's see if we
maybe
get
some
that
of us
information.
maybe
I
some
would
of us
like-
should go over there with you and take a little peek.
Kev?
I would like to make a motion that a letter be drawn up and sent to Mr. McGinnis, I guess would be the starting point as to what the status of that is and the other issues that I raised, what the expectations will be and when that'll be fully functional. I don't know who would be willing to draft that letter, but I think that
Do it by email.
something like, I'd like to make that motion.
Is there a second on that?
Yeah, I'll second that.
I'll second that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's very, very important that it's coming up on Memorial Day weekend. Come on.
Yeah. All right.
I
All
agree.
right, Steve, either you or I will draft that up tomorrow. Okay?
That's going to be a letter or an email.
Email. I'll do an email.
Another email. Now we have two.
No,
emails.
an email to go along the
And
one, the
another
other one I'm gonna
The
send.
other one. We have
two.
one for
We'll
the.
send two. All right,
I would expect a copy to the select board could go along with that too, to at least the chairman anyway.
yeah, Yeah,
I think,
okay.
yeah, I think we have to communicate these things more directly in the future. And an email is, I think, helpful.
they have been done in the past. We'll do it again. All right, that
We
takes
got-
care of the
Are we,
security.
are we gonna vote on, are we gonna vote on that motion?
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That's a motion. We'll do it. Steve, you or I will get together. We'll write that tomorrow. All right?
Absolutely.
Okay, that takes care of the security cameras. The lighting, is the lighting working there, by the way?
The lighting works and it's been working. I have
Yeah.
no idea if it's sufficient for the needs of the cameras because again, see the previous topic. But at some point, we're going to want to change those. I know that people have been asking and trying to figure out how we change the lights to a different pole. And I don't think there's been any answer given on that. For some reason, we're going to need to contact our energy efficiency consultant expert to do that. But I think we're moving LED lights from one pole to another pole. We're not changing or trying to get any kind of grant or solar energy points for it. So I think it's, someone tell us who our electrician is and how quickly they can do it and what needs to be done.
Also, who owns the pole?
Yes, because that was an issue that came up. The pole that is leaning has been there probably as long as I've been here on this planet, and it may go back to the days of Ma Bell, believe it or not, because there was some indication that there was a tag that said Ma Bell, and
Maybe Ma installed it.
a grandma bell. I'm not even sure, but there was
Right.
a telephone at the base of that at one time.
All right.
So where do we stand on, who would we notify? Again, I'd like to commit this to some kind of a motion and paper that,
I think
that
it
we
could be
get
part of
something
this-
out.
Part of the same email that's going to be written about the security and what's there and
Okay,
how do we best use it? And paragraph 2 could be, what do we need to do to move the lights to a more advantageous, and who can do it and who's going to help us pick the lighting if it's not the one we have now?
right, the lighting that shines over the harbor right now, I mean, people are becoming aware of light pollution. And as Jerry and myself can attest, that is a very strong beam ending at every house along the waterfront there. Has been from some time. And I think that we could better accommodate the residents with a change of those lights over to the pole by the shed now. And
You can read a newspaper
by that light.
by that light.
At 2 in the morning, yep.
I don't read newspapers at 2 in the morning, but you can read it late at night.
I've been known to do that.
You sleep
All
with
right.
it shining.
So we'll follow up with the intent of all that
Maybe you could
tomorrow,
put
Steve.
put that as paragraph 3 in our letter. And also the height of those cameras. It would seem to me that we'd have a much better field of view if those cameras were higher. I'd just like to maybe somebody to ask some kind of a justification as to why they were put 7 feet off the ground on a 35-foot pole. So could we please make that as paragraph C on the letter that we're going to be, that
ABC,
you and Steve are going to write?
we'll do it.
I'd like to make a motion that
Go ahead,
be
make the
added to
motion.
the letter.
Okay.
Sorry, so I'd like to make the motion that the concern of the security camera heights and the light over the harbor, that be looked at and worked on.
Second.
And so we have an answer for our
All right.
next meeting. Thank you, Patty.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. All right, we'll do that. We got A, B, and C, right, Steve?
Yes, so far.
Okay, next item is the Fire District 1 truck purchase status. Just, Steve, for those watching at home, just give a little background, a quick background,
Sure.
and the status of where it is right now.
The town has 2 employees from my department under contract, myself and the deputy. Both of our contracts state that the town will supply a municipal vehicle for emergency response and performance of our job. For the first 3 years of Rob as deputy, he used his own vehicle. We had the Humvee, but it wasn't practical. We had former military trucks that we were told to get rid of when we got the pickup truck that I had been driving. So we needed a second vehicle. I started by asking who had what around town that we could use as a second vehicle rather than buying a new one, trying to economize. And of course, nothing was available. Recently, the Fire District 1 decided to upgrade their Tahoe. It's a 4-door, 4-wheel drive SUV, 140,000 miles. I believe it's a 2009. They offered it to us for $3,500. Replacement value on that is closer to $70,000 for a new one. The SUV made sense because it's 4-wheel drive, it's large enough, it's protecting the occupants, the passengers, and it can tow most of our boats, not the largest one. So we worked out a deal. We took that SUV to a local mechanic that does our work to have it checked out. He found some issues that needed repair. The fire district reduced the purchase price of that SUV to reflect the work that it needed. And I have sent to town hall yesterday the request for payment from our operating budget to District 1 for the purchase, to get title in the name of the town, and to do the repairs that were required. So that's been done. The repairs are done. The truck is awaiting the passage of title and the town getting me license plates to put on it. Once that's completed, we have 2 vehicles, and we'll figure out who drives what, when, and where, but it's going to be lettered appropriately for the department. It's going to have siren and lights for responding to medical and law enforcement calls. And it's my hope that we'll keep that going for 5 years. And in 5 years, we'll be looking at a new truck to replace that Tahoe and hopefully keep the truck I've got for another 5 years. So we'd be on a 5-year, 10-year cycle for replacement of vehicles. That was what was accepted in our capital improvement plan. That seems to be what works with other departments in town. And so far, it looks fine for us. So the truck purchase, I'd say it's 99% complete. Everything is in line, except for the actions that are needed by town hall to cut a check, to accept the title, and to get us a license plate. So I appreciate Kevin helping, and I know that all of the board, Kevin's board at the fire district, were working to help us. So I appreciate that. The Prudential Committee really stepped up and made this available for us, and I think it's a great fit for what we need.
Any
Just one
questions?
small correction on that. The truck was proposed at 2,500, not 3,500.
2,500, okay. We got it for less than that. We are still within budget with the repairs that we put into it and the upgrades, the lettering, making it our own, if you will. And I've driven it. The thing is really comfortable, really solid. I like it.
That's great.
Finally,
It's made in the US of A.
finally. Just one thing, when it's all said and done, and we officially own it, I'd like to send a thank you letter to Prudential Committee and to the chief and all the parties that be for their help in this. It's a good example of town cooperation that we could use more of this.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's a good suggestion. Yeah.
Everybody, I don't think we need a motion, but everybody on board with that.
Yeah. We don't need a motion for that.
Okay, Jerry.
Okay.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, good idea.
Everybody on board with that. All right. Next item, the new patrol boat. Status of that?
This one's tougher. I've got it down to basically 3 companies that can supply us what we need. And just so that we're all on the same page and know what we're looking for and why, I'm not looking to get more boats. I'm looking to have less boats, but have boats that serve specific purposes. We have a winter Boston whaler that has heat, protects people we may pull out of the water, has 2 engines, has a cabin that's fully enclosed. It's a winter rescue boat. It needs a lot of room to maneuver because it is bigger than most. And it suits us well in the wintertime. In the summertime, when we're maneuvering between moored boats, and a lot of them, we're pulling alongside dinghies and trying to assist large and small boats. The winter whaler is too big. It's too unwieldy. It sails in the wind because of the large cabin that protects us in the winter. So we've always had an open T-top, center console, smaller boat. And that's what we're looking to replace. We had the orange Ambar, which was surplus Coast Guard, and we ran that for long beyond its useful life. And we auctioned that off this past year, and it's now down in Florida. And basically what I'm looking to do is replace that orange Ambar with a economical, easy maneuver, safe to operate rescue boat, response boat. And we had a boat lined up that was built by a division of Boston Whaler. And I think a month before we got approval to make the purchase, they pulled the plug on that line and they're no longer making it. I want a hard collar around the outside for protection, safety. I want a deep V for Buzzards Bay and the chop that we get right in the harbor. And I want 2 engines for redundancy, maneuverability, and safety. Beyond that, it should be open so that we can talk to people on their level, not trying to lean out of a tiny little port window and the boat moving by the wind and all that. So I've listed the boats I've looked at. Life Proof is a new company. They're a spin-off, if you will, of Safe Boat. Safe Boat has been the standard for the last 10 to 15 years. Safe Boat builds the Coast Guard small boats. They build boats for the environmental police in Massachusetts and throughout the country, but they're pricey. A Safe Boat, 23-foot, equipped the way we need it to be equipped, and it's not lavish, but with outboards, radar, and basic electronics, is over $200,000. We're trying to work within a budget of 175. That's what we were approved at town meeting, and it can't do it with a Safe Boat unless it's a bare boat, and that isn't going to work. So the next is the Life Proof, which is a spin-off of that same company. They look identical. The problem I have with Life Proof is I can't look at the boat I want to buy. They haven't built it yet. They're such a new company that they're showing me pictures, artist rendering. They're showing me boats that are similar to it, but they have inboard instead, or the jet drive instead of outboard. So it would be buying something sight unseen for the most part. And at $170,000, that bugs me. The last possibility is the same company that made the orange boat, the Ambar that we had. That company is Silver Ships out of, I keep saying Louisiana, but it's down in the bayou. Anyway, Silver Ships made the Ambar, and that was the vessel that the Coast Guard used before they moved to the Safe Boat. They make a 21-footer, they make a 23-footer. Both of those would be within our price range, but they have more of a fabric over inflation instead of a hard foam. It is hard foam, but there's still an inflation tube within the hard foam. And after 28 years, which is more than it should have lasted, that's what gave up on that Ambar that we were using. And a new collar system would have been in the $20,000 range. So, you know, I'm a little bit leery of putting that much money into a boat that might last 10 or it might last 20 years, but it's got a weak point in the collar. It'll work and it'll meet the needs probably for as long as I'll be around, but I just want to make sure that what we're doing right now, a choice between sight unseen and something that we already had that does have a little bit of a weakness in that the collar is 3 pieces instead of one hard firm collar. So that's where I'm at. Now, the reason why we don't have this on order already is trying to get details, trying to get where we could see the boat. And Life Proof did send a 31 footer to the Newport Boat Show last fall. And Rob did go look at it and took pictures of it, and it's perfect boat, but we're not looking at the 31. We're not looking at the inboard. That's what they had to show at the boat show. That's sight unseen versus what we had, and they're all backed up minimum of 10 months. Most of them are saying it's about a year out, and that is before this coronavirus shut down a lot of these industries, including the manufacturers that we're looking at. So
I'll ask a question when you're ready.
Go ahead.
Are you done, Steve? I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt you. Are there any safe boats that are used?
I've been hoping, and that in the back of my mind, in the past year, 3 of them came up from Texas for sale that were surplus. And before I could even inquire as to how we might get in line to buy one of them, this is before we had our money approved, all 3 were spoken for. So that's how popular and that's how much in demand they are. So the answer is no. I have been searching literally around the world for a used boat that will suit our needs, that made good economic sense. I wouldn't ship one from Japan because it would probably cost more than buying new. But I mean, if something showed up across the country that we could work with, I'm in favor of that. And it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Think it's going to happen? I mean, does it make sense? I mean, because we're going to, if we're looking at a 10-month waiting period for a new one, anyway, does it seem reasonable to expect that one might come up that we could wait for?
I will say that the past year I've been waiting and looking, and no, it hasn't happened. The 3 that came out of Texas were before we were lined up to make the purchase. And the way my luck runs, the day I place the order for a new one, yes, there'll be a bunch of used ones that show up, but I can't say that's for sure.
Kevin,
Steve, this the new company that's kind of a sight unseen boat. What was the reason that they gave for a spin-off? I mean, does it still look like a solid company? They're pretty much going to build what was built with their former employer or company.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with taking a shot with a new company if it's got a certain background, and as long as the design and the specs are compatible. I think the outboard portion that we're looking for kind of takes the engine out of the equation, because that's going to come from a separate supplier. And being the first boat, they may have something to prove and might even build a little bit better boat. And they may, ensuing boats after that, maybe less quality. So being a new boat doesn't scare me as much, but maybe your thoughts on the status of how the company began.
Well, it's an executive from Safe Boat started Life Proof, but yet when you email this executive, his email is still at Safe Boat. So there's some kind of a crossover that I can't figure out. The 2 companies are located across the street from each other in Bremerton, Washington. They're on the same street. They're basically the same facility.
Yeah.
I can't tell you why the Life Proof is cheaper and new while he's still working and making the Safe Boat. So I'll send out the links to the companies, and maybe someone will find something that I didn't or see something I didn't. But
Is it a question you can ask them?
I have, and I get a lot of nice, fluffy, but no hard answer. Like straight out, why the hell would he go across the street and open up a competition boat while still keeping his address? And, well, he's got a good working relationship, and no, there's no solid answer to a direct question. But I will send out the links to the 3 companies so that, if you get bored, take a look at them, and you guys are here to advise, and that's what I'm looking for. I have a hard time buying something sight unseen, but at some point I understand someone's got to take the leap of faith. And no matter which of these 3 companies we're going with, it's a boatload of money to get it across the country. It's not cheap. It's not going to be like I can drive over and see how the progress is going and move a door or move a handle or do anything like that. So it's all going to be done remotely, and we're not getting it this summer. I've already got stuff in place. We're going to use what we've got, and we'll make it work. But I even thought that maybe with a downturn based on the coronavirus, people would be pulling their orders, and something might rise or fall into our lap, and it hasn't. So.
Not
Well,
yet.
the fact that it's out 10 months, we should make up our minds pretty soon if the new route is what we're going to go and come to a decision, because we don't want to go beyond
No,
the summer 2020 and miss the summer of 2021 besides. So
no, and I can't give hope that we'll get anything used because
right, yeah,
it hasn't
I
happened,
think,
and I have been looking.
yeah.
Matter of fact, I found our old boat in the used market down in Florida.
Yeah.
$47,000, which is 40 grand more than what we sold it for, but that's what they're asking for it without any changes. So
Do we risk losing our money that's been in the budget for this? Do we have to spend it by a certain time?
I do not believe so, but I'm going to get that in writing from the town accountant, because I have seen items that I've gotten approved at town meeting that at the end of the fiscal year, the money just went back into retained earnings. So I want to make sure that that doesn't happen, and I will get that directly from the accountant as to how we.
If you could
Yeah,
get that in
we
writing,
don't want to
that
go,
would be
it
good.
took us 2 years to get that money out, so we
No.
don't want to go through that again.
No, we don't want to go back before town meeting because they don't
No.
need to hear from me again. And there's a freeze on spending, but it doesn't apply to money that was earmarked. This money for the boat was earmarked last October, so I don't think there's a question about it.
Thank you.
Any other
You-
I mean,
questions?
I think all three sound perfectly great that fit your needs, and I just recommend going with your gut and pull the trigger and make it happen.
And I will send out the links again by email so that you can click, and when you're bored, take a look at what I'm looking at and see if you see something that I didn't. And again, all three of these would work perfectly for what we need. I'm just trying to get the most bang for our buck and the most longevity that we can out of it, for where we use it.
Well, if the first one's over 200,000, that's really not one of the
No, that's not
three.
an option.
You got to scratch that off the list. So
The only way to
From
make
what
that
I-
one work would, again, we strip it out, and it's not worth doing
Yeah.
that because we'll end up having
Right.
to spend that money later. when it
so
gets-
we're down to
Unless you
two
get a used one,
essentially.
it doesn't, unless you get a used one, it doesn't make sense.
No, and I believe me, that was my first choice, was to get a used safe boat.
Yeah.
Just don't exist.
Yeah, well, let's try to pull a trigger on this as quickly as. So, as Kevin says, we're not waiting 2 years more before we have this boat in. Especially it's
I
gonna
feel
take a
some
year.
boredom coming on about 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, Steve. So
What was that? A boredom? Okay.
I feel some boredom coming on around 11 o'clock if you send me that link.
Will do.
All right, any more on this? So Steve, you're gonna push on this, try to make a decision. You're gonna eliminate the life-proof boat and go with either the safe boat or the other one?
No, the
Yeah.
safe boat is the one that's too much money. The safe boat was over 200.
Okay,
The life proof or the Ambar.
okay,
And the Ambar does have two options, a 21 and a 23, which are relatively close in cost. So again, I'll send those links so that you see what I'm talking about. And then I'll get something from the accountant specifying that the funds will be held and how I have to do that. And we'll move on from
also,
there.
just for the record too, that the kind of boat you're looking for is a center console that either one person or two people could handle, especially one person could handle without the need to have somebody in a pilot house and a second person out there, correct? So we need to have,
That's correct.
it's a center console, correct?
Center console, walk-through console, T-top, those are all common names for the same thing that we're talking about.
All right. Anything else on that?
I just
Right.
have a quick question, just a
Right.
quick question on that. Steve, do colleges, use this kind of boat and might sell it to each other? Or is this strictly towns and Coast Guard and,
Yeah, it's strictly a government law enforcement rescue boat. It's too
Okay.
large for any tender or coach boat or anything like that. It's more substantial than what, a school might use.
okay, thank you.
A
Just
lot
look-
of towns have two or three of these things. We don't have one.
Yeah, I know.
We definitely should have that. All right, moving right along, seasonal staffing.
I got the go-ahead this week to interview by telephone 2 likely candidates for seasonal assistant. Both are still interested. I will be doing my own telephone interview with written questions, notes, submitting it to personnel with recommendation, up or down for each, and the select board will then have to either accept my recommendation and make an appointment, or they don't have to, but that's how it works, and that will be done, hopefully a recommendation to personnel by this Friday, and it'll be in their hands to do medical testing, anything else that's required pre-employment. So,
Okay. Financial update, want to talk about that?
yeah, I got a update from the accountant yesterday. I emailed it to everybody last night. We all needed to know where we stood in terms of revenue, especially with the way the world is right now. We've been processing payments all along, and the money's still coming in. Surprisingly, we have $12,000 less in Waterways use fees. That's the boat fee. So to date, which is not the end of the fiscal year, we're down $12,000 in Waterways boat fee revenue. We're up, I'm using round numbers, $7,000 in the mooring permits, and we're not done with that yet. And then we have the added $20,375 from the sale of assets. That's the Humvee and the 2 boats that we were able to auction off this year. So we're sitting right now in a fine position. Our projected revenue, I think, was somewhere near 315,000.
Yep.
We're over that for fiscal year 20, which ends on June 30th. I'm pleased with this. I mean, again, we're not done collecting. There are a lot of people who are not going to put their boat in the water this year because of the coronavirus. Understandable. So that we expected that would be down. We expect that the launch permits will be down. It's difficult to get a pass because you can't just walk into town hall yet and buy it. We're doing it online. We're doing it by mail. It's still getting done, and we're, I think, beyond 60 season passes already for the landing.
Did you say 6 or 60?
6-0.
Nice.
Yeah, so I expect that that'll come in pretty close to what we predicted. So that's really it. I mean,
Well, that's good news. But especially since it's a good thing we sold all that excess equipment that we had. That was a big help.
it was a good time to sell it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, any questions on that?
Jerry,
All right, just a couple of, go ahead, Warren.
yeah, I just wanted to say that on the last question that we had on the boats, I think that what we ought to do is authorize Steve to make a choice on one or the other of the boats and put that in the motion and say that we want you to order one of those boats and we stand behind them. It can be, I just can't see the point of waiting another month or 2.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I don't think it's gonna happen. Maybe it'll start to give them away, but I don't think so. And I just think that to have one of the early boats, it's for sure they're not gonna go down. They're gonna go up.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I just say we act on it if we need it. We need something like, with the demand that boat's gonna have on it, it pretty certainly will have a lot of appeal already. It's difficult to figure out how much they're gonna cost and so forth. So I just don't wanna let it go like the Dias Landing has gone, with us not having any communication with, in spite of the job that we do, we have to act on these things when it's hot. And I think that this is much more critical than this one. So that's
Mhm.
my 2 cents. But I think that I don't see any point in waiting,
Okay.
You want to put that in the form of a motion? Want to call that a motion?
please.
All right, is there a second to that?
I'll
Second.
second that, yeah.
Okay. All right. Andy, you second it? You got 3
Sure.
seconds. All
Yeah,
right.
3 seconds.
I'm gonna spread out the seconds. All right, is there any discussion on that? Steve, you good with that?
We'll have something, the best option, and I will still send it out to everybody so you can see my thought processes. And again, more eyes looking at it, the better. But once everyone's done that and looked it over, we'll pull the trigger.
Good.
Good.
Thank you, Warren.
Okay.
Also, okay, any further discussion on this? All right, all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous. Also, Steve, I would like, seriously, like you, once you find something, I would support you flying out and checking it out rather than making sure you have what you have. So I know it's a long way out there, but anyway, it's your call.
Well, the
I would
Silver
encourage you to
Ships,
do that, though.
the Silver Ships is down in Louisiana. That town is just outside of New Orleans.
Yeah. You want to stay away from New Orleans right now.
I don't, is it Louisiana, Steve? I think we had that discussion before because I was down there and you
Yeah,
reminded me that was in another state.
Mississippi, Louisiana.
Yeah, it's not Louisiana.
Is it Mississippi? I know it's somewhere down in.
Yeah, somewhere down there, yeah.
I just
Well,
call it.
they're all lined up. Maybe Alabama. They're all
Yeah,
shipbuilders down there.
It's
Yeah.
all the same.
All right,
Global, it's in Alabama. It's in
Okay.
Theodore, Alabama.
there you go.
Theodore.
Thank you, Patty.
all right, we're good with that? Okay, any other issues you want to talk about? I just have a couple, if you don't mind. What's the status of the fishing pier that we've been working on for 2 years?
I've been getting a lot of emails in the past week from Deborah Wender about that. She wanted to confirm that we had authority to reserve parking spots at the landing. I reminded her of a meeting that we had, and I'm not sure who was able to attend, but Doug Cameron,
Yeah.
acting Public Access Board Director, met us at the landing. He
Yep.
looked at the rain runoff issue. He looked at the collapsing north end of the parking lot, and we stood at the spots that we identified as being able to be used for the bridge fishermen. And those are the ones closest to the bridge. They're only
Mhm.
car, no trailer spots. She asked a question about handicap reserved. We may have to make that reality. Right now, the handicap spots are not there, but easy enough to do. So that was taken care of. Then there became an issue of something about who owns the bridge. And we're almost in a catch-22 because that was resolved by town council about a year ago. So I had to dig up that old email. There's work being done. I'm being asked questions, which leads me to know that there's work being done about that. But I don't know what the big picture is because of the communication, again, with town hall or between town hall and the various departments. So
We've been working on this for how long, Kev? 2 years?
Yeah, 2 years, May 23rd. The last announcement was made at the select board meeting was that the land management agreement or a couple of other things was in the state's court right now. And supposedly that's the last I heard officially. It was announced a week ago yesterday that they were waiting on the state. I don't know if somebody wants to volunteer to make an inquiry down there to see how they're doing with that, or if that is in fact where it is with the state, or is it on the town. And maybe we should figure out how we're going to answer Deb Wender's question. I was at that meeting at the Diastella Landing a couple of years ago. I believe you were there too, Jerry.
Yes.
And Doug Cameron did commit to those spots being available. If Deb wants that in writing, then maybe that should be part of the land management agreement, I guess. But somehow that needs, again, another thing that needs to be put in writing, as Patty has indicated.
I
So many
already
of these
did
things.
I already sent
Oh.
her an email confirming exactly what you just said,
Oh, okay,
Yep.
having the meeting and naming the names, and
okay, so she's satisfied with that?
apparently so, because
Okay,
she asked a couple more questions about, I'm not even sure, but she did follow up to my answer, and I confirmed and reaffirmed, and I even sent an overhead picture of the parking spots.
okay, good.
So you can't do much more than what we've done with that, correct?
No,
We did it in words, we did it in pictures. It's there.
Roger?
Gary, just for background, the last time I talked with my buddies over there at the fisheries, they said that they way overspent in the last fishing piers that they built a couple of years ago, and it's going to take them several years to rebuild their coffers before they'll go forward and be able to give money. So this is a project that's going to be, in my mind, 3 to 5 years away from now.
as long as we're in line, I think that's the most important
All we're
thing.
trying to do is get in line for this.
Right.
So we are ready to go. If it's 5 years, it's 5 years. But who knows? There could be some stimulus money that becomes available. It becomes available to the state, maybe to the Seaport Council, or to somebody. And we don't want to be waiting and waiting and waiting. This is ready to go, and all this, we're not asking for anything other than to get in line, to get this done, and everybody's on board with it. And the big issue that Steve talked about, everybody, whoever talks about this, talk about where the fishermen are going to park. That solves the problem right there. They're going to park wherever they're going to park anyway, but they're going, this is a dedicated area where they can go park and fish.
Yep.
Okay, while we're at that, Steve, from the governor yesterday, somebody was talking about fishing on the bridge. Is that allowed, or different cities and different states have different rules on bridge fishing? Where is that now?
Our bridge is owned and managed by the town through DPW. At the last select board meeting, which I believe was a week and 2 days ago, or a week and a day ago, the select board voted to ban fishing from the Padenham Bridge and Causeway between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. Those are the hours that the bridge tenders are on duty. They want to stop the crowding of fishermen, the competition between the fishermen and the people who are now using the sidewalk in droves because the gyms are closed. And there was a question about, from the select board, as to who made the recommendation. And even though I was in all the meetings and the town administrator was there was some indication that maybe that came from Waterways. But
Yeah, that's right. Which
and
it
it was
didn't.
eventually corrected that it was not a Waterways proposal to ban fishing, but that it had been brought up by the COVID-19 task force led by our health director based on the anticipated competition for limited sidewalk space. And it had nothing to do with Waterways other than we were okay with it. It wasn't our action, it wasn't our request, it wasn't our motion. So the select board finally voted unanimously in favor of the ban. The signs were made, and I believe they are already posted on the bridge itself. They were nicely done signs done by the town. And there was one sign that the town administrator wanted me to install in the display case at the Maritime Center. But the problem being, there's never been a display case at the Maritime Center.
It was on the list.
A recommendation for an alternative location at the Maritime Center. I'm thinking it's going to go close to the crosswalk intersection at the Maritime Center parking lot. There's a gate there that has wire mesh, and this could easily be wired into the mesh. And it just basically says no bridge fishing from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
But that's not our call. We don't control that
We're
decision.
not enforcing it, we're not controlling it, we're not
Okay.
requesting it. So I've just been asked to give a recommendation for a location at the Maritime Center area.
Roger?
Is this in effect immediately? Because people were fishing today.
Yeah,
They're fishing yesterday too.
yeah, the signs are up and they're written in English.
Well, that's your first problem.
Yeah.
It was clear from the select board that the police are going to enforce this. DPW was not in favor of having their bridge tenders do any enforcement for the 16 something an hour that they get paid, which is more than what our assistants get paid. But it was left to the police to enforce.
Ooh. Just so you know, I'm looking at in a lot of different states, and that is a major issue among the locals there because that's their outlet, and that's been big. Kevin?
Just Steve, on the regard to the Maritime Center, will we be flying the flag starting Memorial Day weekend? And I think that would be a good idea, even though the center may be partially or mainly closed, but I think putting the flag up daily would be a good thing to do.
I had really assumed it was going to happen, not really giving it any thought, otherwise.
Okay.
So starting on Memorial Day.
Do you have a flag? Do you need a flag?
He's got all the flags, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I think it's still the U.S. flag. That hasn't changed, I don't think.
All right. We've been locked up too long. All right. Any other issues you want to talk about? Fishing pier, anything we missed?
Nope, I'm putting together a plan for our pump out program that will keep the crew safe that's doing the pump out, that'll keep the occupants of any boat that may be occupied safe. And now I've got to consider the people who might be walking by the piers and docks. And just a quick, it's been suggested, if not substantiated, that the aerosol effect of compressed waste may transmit the virus. We're not talking about the smell, that's odor. We're not talking about physical contact with the waste. We know the hazards of that. But that the compression of waste by a diaphragm pump, as opposed to a remote peristaltic pump, creates compression, it creates aerosol, and it may transmit the virus. So we're looking to do pump outs. Obviously, we don't want this stuff in our water with people swimming and eating seafood from it, but we also don't want to be doing it as we've been doing it, which may have, put people in proximity to the aerosol. So some of the things we're looking at is appointments for pump outs not on docks that people are walking by on. If a boat is occupied while we're doing a pump out, creating that same social distancing or whatever the rate would be from the aerosol. And again, getting the job done without unnecessary risk. That's what I've got to put together in the next week.
Roger. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Steve, do you have enough personal protection equipment? Should we be looking to help you with a grant and get a big stash for you and your team to keep them safe with PPE?
There is already federal money available to the town, which I hope the town would make available to us for reimbursement for anything necessary due to COVID. So if we need to buy, and I'm looking at the fisherman's smock in PVC, which is reusable, wearing that with the arm protection, with a face shield, which we already have, with masks, which we already have, and goggles if need be. But what we don't have is the gown. Yeah, we have gloves, do we need the long gloves? Do we lose tactile mobility with thicker gloves? And should we have small, thinner gloves? And use of the glove, disposal of the glove, decontamination of the boat. This all came out yesterday afternoon, that we are supposed to be decontaminating the boat after each tour. Not just wash it down or rinse it down, but also disinfect it. I don't have disinfectant. I've been looking to buy it. Ace doesn't have it. I've been given some. It won't last long. But what I'm looking at is to get a big drum, to put it into a bug sprayer, clean one, and we can do what we need to do.
If I could make a suggestion.
Sure.
A lot of medical facilities have been obtaining this hard to get stuff from veterinarian supply stores online and have been able to do that. So you might try that.
Okay. I'm doing this on my own. I would think the town would need this on a townwide level.
Absolutely.
Distribute it to departments as needed. But I'm not
Requested,
going to rely
yeah.
on the town to do that. At some point, it'll be known that the slides or the playground equipment that is reopened needs to be decontaminated, that the bucket needs to be hosed down and decontaminated, that whatever it is needs to be regularly cleaned, disinfected, and sanitized. And there's 3 different levels of all that. So that's the plan.
Kevin?
If I drop out of this meeting suddenly, it's because my battery is going to run out. So if I disappear, don't worry about me.
Okay. Just one thing, just to go back to what you're talking about. So in the past, you've had a lot of pump outs on demand kind of thing. People would text or call you and you'd be around and you run out. You were very nice to do that. But with the situation the way it is right now, so what you're looking at is having boats go to a certain location to a mooring. Is that what and you're not going to be in among the docks?
No, we're not going to pump out at the docks. At this point, that's what I foresee, that we're not going to take our boat and squeeze it between 2 other boats or even in an empty slip and take the risk that someone's going to be walking by and could be affected. I don't know. We don't know, so I don't want to take that risk. So a compromise between we're not doing this anymore and we did it the way we did it, it's convenient for the convenience of all the users. We're going to be somewhere in between those 2 extremes.
Okay.
And
people are going to have to make an appointment. It's
They
not
will.
going to be pump out on demand. I certainly encourage you to do that.
during set hours. It's going to be a little inconvenient to the boater, but it's going to be a lot better than you've got to go to Pope's Island or some remote location that will do it at dock. Our pump out dock is great for us, and it may work for smaller boats, but to maneuver a large boat in there with the current, against the current, it's not practical.
No.
And we knew that when we built it. It's the only toehold that we have on the harbor, and we put it where we could put it. But our model has always been, we go to the boat, put it in our boat, and then we put it in the town system. We're going to have to modify that slightly to make it work until the danger passes.
So,
And there'll be a waiting list for that.
so are you planning on doing pump outs just on moorings then?
I don't see how we can do them at a dock and protect anybody that might walk by the dock. That's the problem I have. The second problem I have is if we're geared up with a face mask, limited peripheral vision, gloves, mocks, all of that stuff, it's not safe to be climbing up on the gunnel, to be reaching across the boat the way we were doing it. And that's just added gear is going to add to the danger of jumping from boat to boat or reaching across a boat while it's at the dock. So for those 2 reasons, I see the need to have it done on a mooring.
Will we have a designated mooring available for that, for people that don't have moorings and only have boats on docks? Or
We can either have the bridge mooring, we can have a mooring that's empty and we know, and today we're going to mooring 7-1. It's across from the fuel dock. Meet us there at 10 o'clock. We'll take care of you then. That's what I anticipate.
okay.
Some towns have decided that they're going to leave their pump out boat on a mooring, and you've got to take your boat to the pump out boat and use it. I don't see doing that. First of all, I don't want to lose a boat. I don't want to get hit, damaged, sunk, T-boned. That's not going to happen. And we can't expect larger boats to go through the bridge and go to our pump out dock. So
Yeah.
I think that, again, a compromise in between is we meet you on a mooring, we take care of you, and you can either go off for the weekend or go back to your slip or go to the fuel dock, whatever you got to do. But if you use the fuel dock as a comparison, they don't bring the fuel to your boat. You've got to take your boat to the fuel dock to get your fuel. So now, under the Corona era that we're in, you've got to bring your boat to the pump out boat to get it empty.
Yeah.
And make an appointment.
I think that makes sense.
Absolutely.
I agree.
It's a
I agree.
compromise accommodation for now.
Okay.
And do people have to, are people going to be able to distance themselves from the pumping out event?
Most people, yes. If the boat is big enough, you've got 6-foot beam You're in the starboard aft quarter, we're pumping out on the port side. Our vent is on the port side of our boat. So you've added 3 feet, and then they have to stay 3 feet away from the conjoined boats. It violates the government's, prohibition against rafting, but we've got to be practical. We're going to have to raft if we tow somebody disabled. So,
Yep.
It's a compromise again that I hope will work for all. The people that will complain are those that have gotten so accustomed to, they tie up their boat on Sunday night after the weekend and they walk away from it. And they come back on Friday and they expect that it's empty and ready to go.
Yeah.
They may have to hire somebody to move it. They may have to call us before they leave Friday. We'll have to work that out, but.
Make an appointment.
Yeah.
Everybody has to make an appointment.
Yep.
All right.
Make the
All right, Patty.
enough.
Well, I think it all makes sense.
Yeah.
It all makes sense. Do we need approval from the health department for process and procedure here?
I've been asking the health department, for guidelines. I've been asking the state, and the state's been asking the federal, and the Harbor Master Association's been waiting, and they actually did include some language about pump outs in yesterday's government release. So I guess the word got out, and so we'll follow that. We'll put together the plan and how it's going to work, and we'll send it up for all to comment, view, add, delete, whatever needs to be done.
Okay.
And the governor also has a protocol on pump out that he has for the boat companies too. So that's something you have to follow. All right. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Next meeting. Steve?
That's up to you guys. I guess we're looking at June. Let's see.
About June 30th is a Tuesday.
We ought to get a response on the budget, the Maritime Center. That's fiscal year end. I think we should kind of have a meeting a couple of weeks earlier for an update to see where that pump money is if nothing's been resolved at that time. June 30th kind of kills all that money if it hasn't been done yet.
June 16th is about a month away. It's a Tuesday, 2 weeks before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
Works for me.
Good for me.
So we're looking at June 6th,
16th.
June 16th. Okay, Tuesday, June 16th, 4 o'clock.
Yep.
Correct.
Works for me.
That works.
Works for me.
Okay. All right. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And just before we close, I'd just like to thank DCTV, Daniel and Chief Chase and Cindy Marlin for their help with this meeting, and look forward to our next meeting. Thank you very much.